Hi, this is David from SpellBound. At SpellBound, we create tools that help child life specialists distract, engage, and motivate their patients using augmented reality. Today I want to talk to you about these 3D technologies like augmented reality and virtual reality and how child life teams are using these to improve the patient experience. So in the course of my work, I get to talk with hospitals all over the country to learn about the needs of their teams and the unique challenges that they're facing, and to help them think about how using SpellBound's augmented reality tools could help in some of those areas. As I have those conversations, I'm learning a lot about these child life teams and how they're using these technologies and some of the other challenges they're having. So I wanted to record this presentation to share that knowledge with you, the next generation of child life specialists. I know some of you are already practicing, but all of you are really part of this next generation that's shaping the future of child life and how these technologies are going to help you in your work. And at the end of the day, the most important thing is how can you help these patients? You either are now or you're going to be in the future working with these kids every day. So I'm going to do what I can in this session to share with you helpful information that will help you do that work. So why is this a topic I wanted to share, and why is this especially important for child life right now? A couple months ago, I was talking to a child life technology expert, and they told me we're in the middle of this big wave of virtual reality right now, and another big wave of augmented reality is coming right on its heels. And I would say that with these waves are bringing with them some pretty big opportunities for the hospital and specifically for child life. These technologies are becoming more regular parts of medical treatment, and it's important for child life specialists to educate themselves about them so that they don't fall behind. So let's jump right in. This is going to be a short presentation, so let's start talking about virtual reality and right now what that is and how it's being used in the hospital. So virtual reality, it uses a headset and often headphones to immerse the user in a 3D environment that's complete with sights and sounds, so it feels like you're in another place. It will transport you out of the room that you're in and make you feel like you're in a totally different place. The environment totally covers the user's field of vision, and it also often covers their ears with the headphones. With some systems, the person who's using virtual reality can also interact with the environment in a seemingly real or physical way using special equipment like handheld controllers that have sensors on them. So what makes virtual reality unique, or VR? VR is really immersive because it puts you in a totally different environment. Again, like I said, it feels like it transports you out of the room, and you know what that feeling's like if you've used virtual reality experiences, even something simple like Google Cardboard. It's really good at distracting your brain, and by grabbing all the brain's attention, virtual reality, it closes down pathways that would otherwise transfer pain signals to your brain from your peripheral nervous system. So the more immersed you are, the less pain you feel and the less you can focus on anxiety and fear. So you can see some of the connections and why this makes a lot of sense in child life. So what are some of the main uses for virtual reality in the hospital? One of the main uses is for decreasing a patient's perception of pain. And this could happen in a variety of different situations. It could happen during a painful procedure, like a burn dressing change or a port access, or it could be used outside of a procedure for a non-pharmacological pain relief without having to use more drugs. And because it requires headset setup, it's also best used in longer procedures or outside of procedures in general. So what's an example of this? How does this work? There was a 9-year-old named Blaine who suffered a severe injury to his arm during a go-kart racing accident, and he had to undergo daily painful dressing changes. And so he would start screaming and crying out of fear and had to be sedated before the doctors could even approach him and get close to his arm. So he had a lot of built-up anxiety from what he'd been going through in treatment. So when virtual reality was introduced, it made a huge change, it made a tremendous change for him. When he used virtual reality before and during the dressing change, he no longer needed sedation, which is huge in and of itself. And during his dressing changes, he went from painful screams to going, wow, I'm under the sea looking at sea snakes in this underwater experience he was seeing. This is so cool, you have to see this, and telling that to the people in the room with him. Another main reason that hospitals use VR is to decrease anxiety and fear for patients. This could be used before or during a procedure to give the patient something to focus on, an alternate focus, instead of thinking about the fear and the anxiety. So at Children's Hospital of Wisconsin, there's a pediatric psychologist named Jenny Hoag, and she's been working on a study to measure the impact of virtual reality on patients. But she had a patient named Jamie who really struggled before and during his procedures. He'd get there and immediately feel nauseous and anxious, and he would almost always vomit, sometimes more than once, before the medical team did anything. So a really high anxiety patient. So eventually Jenny, his psychologist, introduced virtual reality, and she was able to help Jamie endure his infusions with a lot less stress and anxiety and pain. And once Jamie saw that Jenny was right about the benefits of virtual reality and helping him, he was a lot more willing to try her other coping suggestions too. And this is something I think is really important to note about virtual reality and augmented reality, is that the end goal isn't that you should isolate the patient, just help them disconnect totally from the world to tune out the world around them. But more that you should be providing these tools and using them to help foster a deeper connection between the provider and the patient, between you and them, or between their parent and them. And Jenny's story, I think, is a great example of how that can happen. So what are some of the benefits and challenges for virtual reality? I'm going to give you a really full picture of these so you think about using these in the hospital to kind of know what to expect. Some of the benefits, like we've talked about, it's highly immersive. It's also, because it's so immersive, it's really distracting. It's a great distraction tool. And lastly, it's really fun for patients. And this is something not to be underestimated when, as you know, that fun element in a patient's healing process can be so important. Some of the challenges to think about and keep in mind if you're thinking about using this in the hospital. Some people that use it may experience motion sickness when they're using VR, similar to if you're sitting in a car and you see the scenery moving but your body doesn't feel that it's moving. Then some people's systems react to that. Similarly, they might have that experience with virtual reality. And so you want to use caution which patients you recommend it for, especially for ones who are already experiencing nausea from illness or medication. And because virtual reality totally covers the patient's vision, they need to be in a safe place when they're using it, where they're not going to bump into anything. And they need to stay more or less in one place when they're using VR. And lastly, the use of VR does require the purchase of a headset. And although prices are dropping for this, right now this is usually $800 or more per headset, so something to keep in mind as well. So let's change tacks and talk about augmented reality now. How is that being used in the hospital, and what is augmented reality? Augmented reality uses the camera on a mobile device, like a smartphone or a tablet, to put 3D digital experiences and sounds over the real world. So it lets you experience the real world and that virtual world at the same time. Oftentimes these digital experiences are brought into the real world by having the device's camera, like the camera on an iPad, for example, recognize a physical trigger item. Like for SpellBound, we use cards and books for our trigger items. So when our app recognizes one of our cards or books, it knows to trigger the 3D experience that goes along with it. So it mixes that real world and that virtual world. Augmented reality is sometimes also delivered on transparent headsets where you can see the real world through the headset, but there's also digital information put over it. An example of this would be like a Google Glass, if you've ever heard of that headset. So what makes augmented reality unique? It has some of the same immersive qualities as virtual reality, but it doesn't require a headset to use it, so the barrier for entry is a little bit different. It puts digital experiences over the real world, so it combines those worlds again in a kind of a unique and magical way. And it works on the devices that many people already own, like phones and tablets. And because it's connected to the real world, something important is that it also allows users to stay connected to the space and the people around them while they're using it. So for example, if your patients are using augmented reality, they still see you and their parent in their room that they're in, and they can still hear you at the same time. So what are some of the ways that augmented reality is being used in the hospital right now? One of the main uses for this in the hospital is to decrease perception of pain, similar to virtual reality. So places where this could be used would be procedures like port accesses and catheterizations and burn dressing changes. An example of this, there's a child life specialist named Brindy who was called into a patient's room, and she came in to find a little boy who needed to get a catheterization. And his mom had seen him go through this procedure before, kind of knew what to expect, and was preparing herself for it. But Brindy pulled out this augmented reality tool to use with her iPad, and she created a 3D scene in the palm of her hand. And the patient was so distracted by that 3D scene during the procedure that he was laughing and smiling throughout the procedure, and his mom was shocked to see him get through this, through a procedure that was so uncomfortable like that. Another usage of augmented reality in the hospital, similar to virtual reality, is decreasing anxiety and fear. Child life specialists might use augmented reality tools leading up to or during procedures to keep patients calm and give them an alternate focus item so they're not thinking about the needle during the procedure or focusing on their fear, or even focusing on their parent's stress level, which can be passing stress through to them. So use cases that might be common for this in the hospital would be IV starts or blood draws. And because it's quick to launch on mobile devices and use quickly on these devices, it can be used for shorter triage procedures and just quick moments where a distraction is needed. So as an example of this, at a Texas hospital, there was a 14-year-old patient who needed to get a blood draw, but she had a needle phobia. So this is a tough situation. But her child life specialist used a SpellBound card, augmented reality card, to distract her during the procedure. And during the procedure, the girl was playing with the card and not even paying attention to the needle. And the mom was looking at the child life specialist, shocked to see this, and the child life specialist is just shushing her to let the girl keep playing. And after they're done, the child life specialist tells her that they're all done with the procedure, and the girl asks, "Can I keep playing with this?" So she was totally distracted from the needle in the procedure, was so immersed that she was just focused on this experience in her hand and wanting to keep playing with it because it was fun. Augmented reality tools are also used in hospitals to motivate patients to move around or to do exercises that they wouldn't want to do otherwise. So PT and OT particularly are really tough to even get adults to do, let alone kids, obviously. And the repetitive and often painful aspects of rehab makes it a really perfect use case for augmented reality because you need something really motivating. So exercises can be made more fun or gamified using AR, and AR is also effective at getting both parents and families, or patients and families, to ambulate and get up and move around the hospital. So some hospitals are also investing in bringing existing artwork in the hospital, like murals, to 3D life using augmented reality. So they can encourage patients and families to get up and explore and move around. So imagine patients and families walking along hospital artwork and looking at it through their device, like a smartphone or a tablet, and they can see elements from that artwork coming to 3D life as they walk down that hallway, like animals or buildings or cars. So this is obviously a great motivator for getting patients and their families to get up and hit movement goals and to be moving around. And last but not least, another big value for augmented reality tools is building relationships between the child life specialist and the patient, or between other providers and the patient, and providing positive ways for parents to be involved as well. So child life specialist has talked to us about how they use SpellBound as a magic trick to get kids to open up when first meeting them. So maybe building the trust or breaking the ice with that patient, helping them kind of build a connection with you and start to trust you more. And the way that augmented reality is also viewed on a tablet or a phone means that it's something that multiple people can do together. So patients and parents can view it together, provide opportunities for them to engage around what they're seeing. So we'll hear stories of this relationship building piece, like a child life specialist at a hospital here in Michigan who used an AR tool to draw out a patient who had behavioral and social issues, and using the AR tools to build a connection with them, allowing them to help the patient get through a lab draw without a sedation when she had previously not been able to do that. So what are some of the benefits and challenges for augmented reality in the hospital? For the benefits, like we've talked about, it's highly immersive. It's something that's an exciting experience for them. It's a really distracting experience because of that. Again, it's a great distraction tool. And it's fun for patients and families. And lastly, it works on the devices that you and your patients and families already have. You, when you're working in a hospital, will have your iPad, for example. Some of the challenges to keep in mind is that when patients are lying on their back or their stomach, it could be challenging for them to orient the experience to orient the 3D experience in a way that they can still see it when you're using a device like an iPad. So depending on the way the child is positioned, may make it challenging to use the augmented reality tools. And secondly, very old iPads or technology, old tablets or phones could have trouble using augmented reality tools if they can't run more modern apps. So as we wrap up the presentation and finish, I also want to give you a sense of where we see these 3D technologies going in the future. Because in some ways, virtual reality and augmented reality are super young technologies in the hospital, so their future uses will be a lot more broad than we use them now. I mean, if you think about how smartphones have transitioned to something that seemed really crazy in 2007 when they first came out, to now something that's a really normal, everyday part of our life, I think AR and VR will probably have a similar progression. So here are some of the big areas where we think AR and VR will make most of the impact, or will make a big impact in the hospital in the future. One of those is education, and we could talk about a lot of different things here. I'll just focus on one, which is simulating medical procedures for patients. So letting kids experience things that they're going to have happen to them in the hospital in a safe way, maybe before they even get there. So think about an MRI machine. It's a scary experience. The sights and sounds can be really intimidating. Lots of kids have to be sedated to even get an MRI. And so if a patient instead from their own home, in their bed at home, for example, could be looking around them using augmented reality to see the MRI machine, what it looks like, and to hear the sights and sounds of it, to get used to it before they even get to the hospital, so that when they're there, they're already used to it, they're ready for it, and they can maybe even go through it without having to be sedated this time. Another example would be patient experience, kind of transforming what the hospital feels like. And patients' room using virtual reality and augmented reality could be turned into a jungle, or whatever kind of scene the patient wants to see so that they can have some control while they're in that hospital stay. Or it could be using virtual reality for collaborative games, for patients to play in activity rooms together. Or if they're stuck in their room in isolation, playing those games with other patients who are also stuck in their rooms using virtual reality. So the possibilities for patient experience is really, truly endless. And lastly, I think everyday things are also going to be improved a lot and impacted a lot by virtual reality and augmented reality. A lot of the uses probably won't be crazy or flashy experiences, but things that we do every day that are just easier now because we'll have VR and AR assistance when we do it. So we're seeing signs of all these things, and we're seeing signs of hospitals changing to reflect this new focus on technology. For example, some hospitals are adding positions like a patient technology specialist or coordinator, and really thinking about how to help their teams better use the technologies that are available to them. So this isn't about cutting clinicians either. Hospitals are really working on empowering their current staff and helping them better use technology through roles like this. So that's the end of my presentation. Thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And if you have questions, feel free to email us at hello@spellboundar.com. We'd really love to hear from you. You can also learn more about our augmented reality tools at our website, spellboundar.com. And make sure to check out our awesome child life blog posts on our blog.